Just Another Job. Part 4. Gardening Tools. The armored suit which Rem usually wore was called Brelt. It was the most balanced of the three and offered more protection than Cant. The helmet was slightly heavier, and his face was protected by one very intimidating-looking steel mask, which still offered him a good field of vision. The sleeved, riveted chainmail was long, and its skirt protected the upper parts of his legs. Brelt also has sabatons, boots, knee guards made of leather, but those were reinforced with metal plates. The chainmail was too covered with square steel plates which protected his vital areas. Enchanted by one of his friends in the city, Brelt sported a high resistance to piercing weapons. Rem could still skulk in the shadows with this armor suit and need not fear being backstabbed. At least once or twice, that is. It took Rem close to half an hour to properly dress himself, and that's with the help of a professional maid. Somebody once told him donning armor was easy and quick. Said somebody was caught with their pants down and stabbed full of arrowheads later. For you see, nobody could armor up on their own. Not unless you were wearing something light, like a gambeson, and a chain shirt, for example. Rem looked at the nearest polished surface and carefully locked his metal mask into his helmet's special grooves. Safely secured, that steel mask would not only protect his average-looking face, but could also scare an unwitting bandit or two. Crafted by the same halfling armorer who built Cant, the mask made him look like an undead. Rem smiled beneath the skull-shaped mask. Yes, it was indeed somewhat of a tired motif, but why change something if it worked so well? The thing even had a low-tier magic spell in it, concealing his eyes, and the casual observer would see just dark, empty sockets. Rem did a couple squats and jumps to test the fit of his suit. He then walked over to the weapons rack. Never mind that this was a simple job, or at least that's what he thought at first. The solver of problems was always well armed. You never knew what challenges it was that destiny had spun that day when you walked out of your home. Altercations were sometimes unavoidable, and as much as he disliked needless slaughter, Rem thought it best to have the proper weapon in hand than not. First, Rem glanced at his collection of ranged weaponry. This job was, at least on first glance, to be a light skirmish, and his enemy was probably a dozen strong. He outright discarded the notion of lugging his arcane musket about. Rem already had 6 of those watching his behind, and the charges for this beastly thing cost an arm and a leg. Rem had also paid top coin for the services of said warband. Therefore, it was a needless expenditure for him to waste more gold on expensive ammunition. Taking into account the fact that he had to shoot his chosen weapon in a forced environment, Rem had a somewhat limited choice. Nevertheless, his tools were well crafted and enchanted, their ammunition cheap and easy to procure on the shadow market. Rem had to carefully pick one that most suited the tactics he'd choose. The first weapon Rem picked up from his, quote, gun rack was a light automatic crossbow. This was the Loom, a compact light weapon with medium range and excellent accuracy. It was fed with clips, and a lever mechanism, which was part of the trigger assembly, allowed the shooter to load the next bolt. The mechanism was well maintained and oiled with alchemical grease. It produced almost no sound when Rem pulled it. Reloading, at least for someone experienced like him, took only but a second. Replacing the spent 5-bolt clip with a fresh one was a bit time-consuming. Still, it only took a few seconds. Of course, all bolt tips were drenched in poison. Easy to make, quote, choke death quickly filled the target's lungs with liquid, ensuring slow and agonizing death. That poison had a nifty side effect. Said target was also unable to scream for help. The loom was Rem's weapon of choice when he had to go stealthy all the way. There was a catch though: the poison. Sometimes the physically tough resisted choke death, and there were people who were outright immune to it. Like all the Dark Elves, for example. Almost all the poisoners who made this stuff were Dark Elves. The weapon was enchanted with Night Watch magic, allowing Rem to see in the dark when he fired it, and he carried a total of 2 clips, one loaded and one spare. The second weapon Rem picked up was his war bow, Stake. Somewhat bigger than the loom, it was nevertheless a compact weapon, and only someone like him could draw it all the way. Obviously, the bow was made for him personally. Everything was precisely calculated, both bowstring and the bow itself, so that he could make use of all of his strength. The weapon, just as any other in his arsenal, was enchanted. Stake had a kinetic punch magic imbued into his bowstring, and weak-footed, limp-kneed enemies were bound to fall square on their asses after being hit. That is, if they survived with an arrow sticking out of their backs. Bodkin arrowheads adorned all of its arrows, and the compact quiver, which held 10 of those safely secured, muffled so that there was no noise when the archer pulled one. Since it was a bow, Rem could try some of his trick shots, like losing 2 arrows at once and even a curved shot. Stake was a flexible weapon, and he could count on its armor-piercing arrows to go through chainmail, well, in most cases. Nevertheless, the bow strained him considerably, and after a dozen of shots, he had to take a breather. And last, but not least, Rem examined his tri-shooter. The 3-barreled carbine was much akin like his long arcane musket, but its charges were only 1/3 of their cost. Its 3 barrels turned in a manner akin to a revolver's cylinder. When one barrel was empty, the shooter rotated the next one into position and cocked the hammer. It was a muzzleloader, and the arcane powder used imbued the musket ball with magical energy. Therefore, low-tier projectile defense magic was all but useless against its shots. That was by no means a quiet weapon, and had quite the kick. But in most cases, what you hit rolled dead on the ground with a nice gory hole, or a missing limb. Took some time to reload, around a minute or so, in the best of conditions. The weapon was enchanted with bleeding cut magic. Any and all wounds that it caused bled profusely until treated with a healing spell or potions. Rem carried 9 cartridges total, 3 loaded and 6 spared, all neatly packed in their loops on the weapon's leather sling. His particular version was crafted in such a way that Rem could fire all 3 barrels at the same time. That he did, but once. He spent a month after healing his broken collarbone and dislocated shoulder. If you've enjoyed this telling, then please consider subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and sharing, as that would help this channel grow exponentially. Also, Give a little support to the writer and author of this tale, Eric Marr, also known as the Black Knight, listed down below. He can be found on Minds.com and is selling books. Star Shatter, a sci-fi novel, found on Amazon, also linked below. With that, I want to thank you for visiting. Have a wonderful night. God bless, and farewell.